Your brain has an emergency protocol for the exact moment you realize you're lost. It activates before you even admit it to yourself. Not panic, not fear, something older than both. Think about the last time your phone died somewhere unfamiliar. Your chest tightened.
Your eyes started scanning for anything that looked familiar. A sign, a building, a stranger's face. That wasn't random stress. That was 300,000 years of software booting up inside your skull. So here's the real question. When that program runs, are you one of the rare few who actually navigate their way out? Or one of the vast majority who walk in circles without ever noticing? Most people are certain they'd walk in a straight line.
They're wrong, and your ancestors knew exactly why. Picture a hunter, alone, in a forest 60,000 years ago. His name is lost to time, so call him Keto. He followed a wounded antelope past the last tree he recognized. Now the canopy looks the same in every direction. His heart is pounding.
But he doesn't run. Keto stops. He looks up. The sun sits low, slanting through the leaves, and he knows without a map, without a compass, roughly where west is. He notices the moss thickening on one side of a trunk. He remembers the slope under his feet, gently rising the way he came. None of this is guesswork. It's a mental map, built and rebuilt with every step since he left camp that morning. He also listens. Water, somewhere to his left, faint but steady. The same stream his camp sits beside, further downhill. He fixes his eyes on one tall, oddly split tree ahead and walks toward it, refusing to let his path drift. That single trick, locking onto one fixed point instead of just walking straight, is the difference between finding his way home and disappearing into the forest for good. This wasn't a gift Keto was born with.
It was trained, the same way a muscle is trained every single day of his life. Early humans who could hold a mental map, who could track direction using the sun, the stars, a rise in the land, the flow of a stream, survived to have children. The ones who couldn't simply didn't come home. Getting lost, for most of human history, was often a death sentence. So evolution built you a brain that treats "I don't know where I am" as one of the most urgent alarms it can raise. And this wasn't one lucky trick from one lucky group. On the other side of the planet, Pacific Islander navigators crossed thousands of miles of open ocean with no instruments at all, reading the direction of swells through the hull of a canoe, memorizing star paths passed down for generations.
Different continents, different climates, the same underlying wiring, a brain built to hold a map and refuse to let it go blank. Now, fast forward past agriculture, past cities, past compasses and paper maps, all the way to right now, in your pocket. You have a device that draws the entire mental map for you, instantly, every time. And that convenience came at a cost nobody warned you about. In 2009, researcher Jan Salmon ran a strange experiment. He sent people walking through a forest and across a featureless desert fitted with GPS trackers and told them simply to walk in a straight line. Some wore blindfolds. On a cloudy day with no sun and no landmarks to check against, almost everyone drifted, tracing slow loops, sometimes less than 60 feet wide, crossing their own earlier footprints without ever noticing. The one thing that reliably kept people walking straight was a single fixed point to stare at, like Keto's split tree. Take that away and the human body simply cannot hold a line on its own. Which means the moment you hand your direction finding over to a screen, you're not adding a tool, you're switching off the very check your brain evolved to run. It gets stranger once real people actually go missing. Psychologist Kenneth Hill spent years analyzing search and rescue cases and found the same pattern over and over. Lost hikers rarely wander randomly. Panic narrows their attention, and instead of climbing to a ridge to get their bearings, the one move that would actually help, most of them do the opposite. They speed up. They follow the easiest path downhill, not the smartest one. The ancient alarm fires perfectly. It's the follow-through, the calm scan for a landmark that modern life has let so many people forget how to do. If you've ever wondered whether your own sense of direction feels weaker than it used to, that's not just you getting older. That's the muscle going quiet from disuse. And that muscle is a real physical thing inside your head. Neuroscientist Eleanor Maguire scanned the brains of London's taxi drivers, the ones who spend years memorizing the city's tangled streets by heart. Their hippocampus, the brain's internal mapmaker, had physically grown larger than average, especially in drivers with the most years on the job. Use the map, and the organ that draws it gets stronger. Which raises an uncomfortable flip side. Researcher Veronique Bobot has spent years studying what happens to that same region in people who rely heavily on GPS instead of their own memory for navigation. Her findings point the same direction. Again and again, habitual GPS use is linked to reduced activity and less gray matter in exactly the part of the brain Quito used to survive that forest. In her studies, the heaviest GPS users weren't just slightly worse at finding their way without help. Given the same city block twice, weeks apart, many couldn't reliably say they'd been there before at all. The map had done the remembering for them, so the brain quietly stopped bothering. If you've ever felt a small flash of panic the second your map app freezes, even in your own neighborhood, comment below whether that's happened to you in a place you've lived for years, because that reaction is your ancient alarm still fully wired and waiting. Here's what that costs you, quietly, every week. Every turn you follow blindly instead of noticing is a rep your hippocampus never gets. Every trip where you never once looked up from the blue dot is a version of Quito's forest walk your brain didn't get to practice. Multiply that by years, and it's not surprising that so many people report feeling a mild, persistent disorientation the instant technology fails them, lost inside their own city, on a street they've technically driven 100 times. Picture that same driver, phone dead, standing at an intersection they've passed 1,000 times. Their heart rate climbs exactly the way Quito's did in that forest. But where Quito's brain had thousands of hours of practice reading suns and slopes and streams to draw on, the modern driver's map drawing muscle has spent years sitting idle in a pocket. The alarm is identical. The tool it once had to work with is gone. This isn't really about maps. It's about a much older feeling. The gap between knowing where you are and knowing you don't. Your ancestors' bodies treated that gap as an emergency worth solving with their full attention. Yours still does. You just rarely give it the chance to try. If you want to know what else evolution wired into you that modern life quietly switched off, subscribe to Neanderthink. There's a lot more hiding in that old software. So what do you actually do with this? Not throw away your phone. That's not realistic, and it isn't what your ancestors would tell you anyway. The fix is smaller than that. Before you type an address into your map app, glance up first. Notice one real landmark, a building, a bend in the road, the direction of the sun. Let your brain take one honest attempt at the mental map before the screen draws it for you. And if the alarm ever does go off for real, if you're actually turned around with no signal and no map, remember what Kenneth Hill's research points to. Don't speed up. Stop the way Quito stopped. Find one fixed point. Let the oldest part of your brain finish the job it was built to do instead of overriding it with panic. That single habit, repeated enough times, is enough to keep the muscle from going fully silent. Quito never had the luxury of outsourcing that alarm. He carried the whole map in his head, rebuilt fresh every single day, because his life depended on it never going blank. You do have that luxury now, a screen that thinks for you, a dot that always knows where you are, right up until the moment it doesn't. The question was never really whether you'd get lost. Everyone eventually does, on some street, in some parking garage, on some hike that looked shorter on the app. The real question is whether, when that moment comes, there's still a mental map underneath the blue dot waiting to be used, or whether the muscle went quiet years ago and nobody ever told you. Your brain still runs that same emergency protocol every single day, the exact one that got Quito home through that forest. Most of the time, you never even notice it's there, humming quietly under the surface, until the one moment you actually need it, and find out whether you ever gave it anything to work with.